Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome CEO, the Travel Corporation, Brett Tollman, in discussion with Skift ex-editor Paul Brady.
Welcome back, everyone. Very glad to be here, and Brett, thank you so much for joining us. We're glad to have you because for those people that may not know, you own and operate one of the largest privately held travel companies in the world, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to have you here to talk about sustainability and the efforts that you're able to make at scale. But before we dive into all of those great topics, I just want to ask you to give us a little bit of a sketch for those that may not know all of the different lines of business that you have and some of the many brands that you're operating.
Thanks, Paul. So we're a fourth-generation, family-owned and run business. We have over 30 brands that go from luxury hotels, luxury river cruising, different immersive land travel brands like Trafalgar, Insight, and Kentucky, and day sightseeing, and both inbound as well as outbound programs around those.
Right. And I have to do my PSA, too, to remind people that using the Forum app, you can submit questions for us, and we'll try to take as much time as we can to answer many of those near the end of this session. So you have all these brands, and I want to ask you sort of a tough question to start. You know, that reminds me a bit of these hospitality players, say Marriott, Hilton. You're operating so many brands. How do you avoid customer confusion or customer sort of muddling about that?
Something that's always been very clear and strong for us. Brand differentiation is achieved by we have a CEO for each brand, separate sales and marketing teams for each, some shared services at the back end, accounting, finance, contact centers, and so forth. We do best of breed services for each of the brands, but we work very hard to keep all of our brands different and ensure that each one has clear USPs and differentiation in the marketplaces we work in.
So it's not about TTC as a holding company, it's about each individual brand sort of shining on its strength.
Exactly.
Right. When it comes to Asia, you know, how are you situated here at the moment, and what are still some opportunities that you're looking to tap into?
Sure. So Asia is a phenomenal area of the world, obviously, and it's wonderful to be here with friends and colleagues. We've been in market over 30 years. We've had offices here in Singapore for over 30 years. We've been in China for over 20, and then we work in so many countries from Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore, Indonesia, South Korea, Taiwan. We've been in Japan for some time, and we've certainly had a very big footprint in Australia and New Zealand as well.
Right. And with all these different brands, you're really targeting a huge swath of consumers, really every consumer,
Billions.
Right? And I wonder if you still feel like you're thought of as a group travel operator, and if so, is it still true that people want to travel with 50 of their closest friends?
You obviously haven't been on one of these trips with us.
Not lately.
So we talk about the perfect group sizes if you're looking at Trafalgar, Insight, Kentucky in particular. I think, unfortunately, what used to be called tour operators or escorted tours, and we call them guided holidays and vacations today, are very different. I'm always amazed that people want to talk about scale like that when you have 5,000 passenger ocean cruise ships. And the cruise lines do a brilliant job of showing two people on a deserted island or coming out of the jacuzzi all by themselves. But we truly offer phenomenally immersive experiences, and the groups average anywhere from 30 to 40 people on our large 50-seat motor coaches. But they really do make friends for a lifetime. And we sell in 35 countries, all that have English-speaking capabilities. And so you travel with people from Australia, New Zealand, Canada, South Africa, the US, all the Asian countries that I've mentioned. And you really do make friends for a lifetime. And you have the opportunity through choice and personalization that we'll talk about in a moment with technology to break into much smaller group sizes. And then our footprints, particularly small. Motor coach travel, for example, is one of the most efficient forms of travel from a carbon footprint standpoint.
What I was going to ask, there's also, you know, the upside of that is you have some particular capabilities or benefits of scale, and I'm sure you're able to drive access that people wouldn't be able to get on their own, too. Is that
Sure.
something that you try to emphasize to your passengers?
Always. And it's both the must-see destinations as well as the off-the-beaten track. and we're certainly doing more and more of that. We've been in Sri Lanka for a couple of years, and certainly our thoughts go out to those people still recovering from that awful incident. We're going to Colombia for the first time next year. But then even in the traditional destinations in Europe, Asia, Australia, and so forth, we've certainly developed over the last decade, really, some amazing experiences where you can't go with anyone else, whether you're on a cruise or traveling independently, through these network of experiences that we offer.
Right. Let's dial into Kentucky specifically, which is aimed, and correct me if I'm wrong, aimed at both millennial and Gen Z travelers.
18 to 35.
Right. And you're looking to sort of revive that brand, reframe that brand. How would you say the work that's underway is? Reboot. Okay. And what's at stake here, and what are you trying to do there?
Sure. So Kentucky was started in 1962 in Australia, and it certainly changed dramatically over time as obviously consumer behavior has changed. Mm-hmm. And obviously millennials are different to Gen Z, and we're starting to see some of our first Gen Z travelers come in. And it's about understanding and embracing what they're looking for. And obviously the research has been done, whether it's with Skift or others, that obviously they would rather invest in travel and experiences and material goods. And so we've developed a number of experiences and types of travel for Kentucky that I think have and will continue to resonate for some time to come. So we're investing in our chateau, for example, we have in the Loire Valley that we've had for some time, and really creating a new, young, hip Soho House kind of experience there for them, where you can do everything from immersive cocktail experiences to yoga in the mornings and different types of walking experiences, to then working with a number of our operators around the world to develop new, smaller group experiences, so it's no longer just 50 people. And we've taken out some of the traditional frowned upon experiences. So when you used to go to Amsterdam, the first thing you'd do would go to a sex show in the evenings. That's gone. And
still optional, though.
Still optional.
Right.
We certainly don't encourage it.
Right.
Appreciating 33% of millennials and Gen Z don't drink anymore. We've certainly de-emphasized a lot of the partying and drinking that was really a core part of Kentucky 20 years ago. And just continuing to understand our travelers and what they're looking for and developing fantastic experiences for them.
Yeah, well, you sent over a video that I think we have queued up to kind of demonstrate, I would say, what is changing with the brand and some of the marketing that goes into it. So let's see if we can take a peek at that clip.
Right.
These inspirational women on a journey through India, there's one common thread that ties their stories together: education. The gap between wealthy and poor, and educated and uneducated, is what strikes you when you travel here. And it's this disparity that means opportunities for many women are scarce. But if women are equipped with skills and knowledge, the way in which they're perceived by their families and communities begins to change. And even more important than that, the way they value themselves begins to change.
Now that's how you want people to think about these trips, right? So tell us a bit about putting that together and why it's important and reframing the way people think about you.
Sure. So that lady's name is Nadine Sikora. She's a wonderful social influencer from Canada. We've worked with for probably a decade now. And Kentucky really started that around that time, was to work with social influencers to do great storytelling and to speak as travelers rather than obviously from the brand's perspective of what it's like to go to these destinations and to understand the cultures and the communities we're going to be visiting, and to give insights on how you as a traveler can benefit the community, especially obviously around women's issues in India that we're all familiar with. And it's certainly a key part of how we get more people into the top funnel per se, is to tell those stories by using travelers rather than ourselves. We all understand obviously what user reviews are about, and so that's a part of the storytelling as well, is having our users and our travelers tell the stories rather than the brand, which I think is so important today.
Let's pivot a little bit to another topic that I know is core to you, which is a focus on sustainability, and give us the kind of, actually wait, before we get into your specific efforts, I wanted to ask the bigger question, which is, I think we've seen, especially in travel, a lot of companies that put sustainability on themselves. They say, we're going to take care of this. But isn't that something that governments should be doing, or policymakers? I mean, why does a private company have to tackle something like climate change and global sustainability efforts?
It's obviously a huge issue, and I don't think we can depend on governments alone. We obviously both carry a passport of a country that certainly today's leadership doesn't believe in climate change or global warming. So certainly from a US perspective, we have to do our part. But we have one planet and we're all global citizens, and I think it's incumbent on every one of us, everyone in this room, every one of us who travel, but not just when you travel, but in our daily lives, to do more, because you just look at the amount of waste that we generate. It's not just about plastic, it's everything. And we all need to be more responsible about reducing, reusing, recycling, looking at our footprint and how we can all be better citizens, because if we're not careful, and obviously there's been some terrible reports just issued the last couple of days on the huge rise in methane to obviously CO2 and how it's grown over the last couple of years. So unless you all think you're going to be living on Mars soon, every one of us needs to do more.
Right. Well, tell us a bit about what TTC is doing with Tread Right Foundation and some of the initiatives there.
Sure. So it's a nonprofit we started just over 10 years ago to try to do our part to give back. We do believe, unlike many companies, that it's our responsibility, and it's not a responsibility to be asking our travelers to donate. So we only take a percentage of our profits and put those into the foundation. We work with some amazing charities and NGOs, and if anyone wants to contribute, we recommend and we provide links to those charities for them to donate or engage directly. We have 3 pillars around planet, wildlife, and people, and each one of those, I think, helps ensure that we're protecting our planet, the destinations we go to, the local communities, and wildlife, which certainly, having come from South Africa originally, and is a key part of experiences, whether you go to this part of the world or India and or Africa. And wildlife is such an important part of the experiences that you want to do. But I think one has to do it correctly. So the ethical treatment of animals is important, so we no longer allow experiences on any of our trips we don't run with the bulls anymore, we don't allow shark diving, elephant riding, and then equally we work with charities such as SOS India, which works in India to rehabilitate elephants that have either come out of the tourism industry or circuses. And our travelers can go there and understand the work they do and understand why they as travelers should not be engaging with animals in that way. With communities, it's helping people on the ground. So we love working with micro projects. Women's empowerment is an area that's very passionate for myself and others within our group. So, for example, we went to Jordan for the first time last February, found out a women's social enterprise that was started by Queen Noor in '93. But there's 150 spinsters that work there, and they've never earned an income. They were behind on their taxes and rent. And so we came up with a grant for a couple of years to help build out their gift shop and improve the kitchen. A lot of the equipment didn't work. And now we bring our travelers there where they can learn about pottery making, paper making, weaving. They make beautiful carpets. They have a meal there, so we're also funding some of the daily enterprise. We're promoting it to other companies as well within the industry. And then you can go in the gift shop and buy some of these beautiful, locally made artisan trinkets to take back to family.
Right. Can I ask how you sort of vet these experiences, or how you develop them? Is there staff on the ground that takes care of that, or how do you sort of decide what's right, what's wrong for?
Combination of things. We have a wonderful steering committee that includes Céline Cousteau, who's the granddaughter of Jacques Cousteau, so she brings wonderful experience with indigenous communities to marine life. Costas Christ, who writes for National Geographic Traveler and Virtuoso, who's our chairman, and who's an incredible sustainability expert. And then our own people, always looking for finding out about projects such as going to Jordan last year, or we found a couple of great projects in Colombia for next year. When I was in South Africa a few years ago, I took my family to experience something called Cheetah Outreach, which works with farmers in South Africa to try to help protect their livestock by introducing something called an Anatolian sheepdog, which is this huge dog that comes from Turkey. And the dogs keep cheetah away, which therefore means the cheetahs are not preying on the livestock of the farmer, and the farmer therefore doesn't have to kill the cheetah. And we've adapted that to one of our Relish Chateau properties in the Cederberg Mountains called Bushman's Kloof, where the farmers there for the last couple of decades have been through a terrible drought. And so they're finding it's very hard to stay alive, per se, not just in feeding their families and their animals, but also their livestock. And there's something called a Cape leopard that's a smaller, much stockier leopard that lives up in the mountains there. And there's maybe 50 left in the world. And so we've applied the cheetah archery program to that. We've started introducing the dogs to the farmers. So we have 10 farms that now have these dogs. And they become immersed in the farmer's life. And by doing the same thing to protect their livestock, they'll no longer have to kill the Cape leopard, which there's been probably 6 shootings in the last 5 years.
Wow.
And in turn, then now Bushman's Kloof property, the guests, if they want to learn about that and have one of these local experiences, just like Airbnb and others offer, we can then go and have tea or coffee with the farmer, learn about what life's like in that part of the world, and understand what the dog program's doing.
Right. I want to take a minute to recognize one of the big things that we're focused on this year editorially at Skift is sort of plastics and plastics in the travel industry. You guys are kind of leading the way at a big scale on reducing single-use plastics. So can you fill us in on what you've done and what's left to be accomplished?
So we certainly have declared war, per se, on plastic, and it's obviously not just plastic, it's everything. But
Right.
plastic is the scourge of the earth. We do a lot of volunteering. All of our team get a couple of paid days to volunteer. Here in Singapore, our team do beach cleanups. We do those around the world. We work with surf riders and other efforts. And when you really see what plastic does to our marine life, obviously last night at the aquarium, they were serving sushi. We all eat the sushi that has been digested plastic. So we're in turn eating the garbage and the pollution that we're creating. So I think it's so important that we eliminate as much plastic as possible. On our river cruise ships and in our hotels, we're about 90% of the way there. Even the gloves that one uses to be sanitary and food preparation has now been converted to a potato starch product rather than plastic. And we're really trying to get through every phase there. On our touring brands, we decided at the beginning of the year to not wait any longer, and we've eliminated all plastic water bottles, which will be probably a couple of million bottles a year that we're taking out of supply. And we've committed that by the end of 2022, every one of the brands within the family will not be dependent on any unnecessary single-use plastics throughout our organization. So I certainly support the hotel I'm staying here, and I see in the rooms they have the bottles, eliminating all plastic, and there's refillable stations on every floor. And one of the things Treadright's now starting to do with some of our supply chain throughout Europe and elsewhere is supporting hotels to provide these water refilling stations, because obviously in 90% of the places, drinking water from a tap is fine, but in others it's not. Kentucky has started a new water program, which we subsidizing for our travelers. It costs about $26 a bottle, which is a silicone bottle, 1 liter, with 300 reusable uses with a charcoal filter. And we provide a few extra charcoal filters, and we're subsidizing that at the cost of $10 to our travelers for those who don't bring a bottle with them. But equally important, rather than giving away another bottle, is encouraging our travelers before they come on holiday with us to bring their own bottle.
Just bring their own, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And then we'll make sure that we can give you clean drinking water on your trip.
Excellent. We'll check with you in 2022 to see how it's gone. I want to take some time briefly just to ask you about technology. We hit on it there at the start. Give us a sense of how you're using technology, whichever form of that technology you think of first, to ease the traveler journey or make it easier to book these sorts of trips.
So starting on the experiences, obviously we all know it's very much about personalization and customization today. Everyone, no matter which country you come from, want great value, great experiences, and so much can be delivered via mobile capabilities. So over the last 5 years, we've developed a travel portal for our brands so that in advance you can register with us. We can capture a lot of personal details, what your interests are, what your dietary needs are, your passport information, and so forth, to make the trip far more seamless. Mm-hmm. And then also to personalize it so we know if your interest is art or music, food, and so forth. Our travel directors and trip managers in advance can help ensure that we're curating the itineraries as much as possible for you. So that's a great way one can use technology to improve the personalization of a trip for someone. We work with a number of partners to continue to look at how we can make the trip more seamless. And it's wonderful to work with some very innovative partners in that regard in the space. I was just at a forum in Lucerne and found out about other ways you can take impact obviously down. So there's a company that was started in Switzerland that manages and analyzes your food waste. And we're working with them to start doing that in all of our hotels and cruise ships. So, technology has a wonderful way of impacting and making you more efficient and improving the experience. But we certainly don't believe that technology is something that should try to automate things to take away from the customer experience in order to just take cost out. So that's something we avoid.
Right. In terms of the cruise specifically, as well as I guess sort of the tour packages or tour programs, do you see digital distribution increasing there? I mean, is that going to be something you're working towards, and where are you right now?
So digital distribution is obviously so important. We're very much channel agnostic. It's all about the traveler and the consumer. It's not about us. It's not about our travel partners in the B2B space. And so as the world continues to evolve, obviously any company that wants to survive and succeed in our incredible industry needs to be able to find ways to connect seamlessly. So we work with companies such as Klook, TourRadar, and others in that side of the space. The likes of Expedia and so forth are still not focused on multi-day tours. We're sure they'll get there when you read about some of the challenges that they have. And just listening to Scott Kirby and Expedia, I'm sure there will be the need to look at those other options. But however, and whichever way, in a cost-effective way, we can work with digital distribution, we certainly want to.
Yeah, I think that kind of leads into one of the top questions here, that it is a fragmented space. How are you able to deliver all of that content that people want, and how will you be able to compete going forward?
Sure. So we have a couple of hundred developers and BAs and so forth within our own team. So we're constantly working on ways to develop more agile APIs and ways for third parties to connect with us. The beautiful thing is we have the content, and we're very passionate about developing and maintaining some of the best experiences in the world. As I said, with user reviews, if you lie, you die, as Google says. And our NPS scores are over 90 in most of our brands. We use third-party rating systems such as FIFO out of the UK, and almost all of our brands are gold standards. And so travelers, consumers can come to either our website or other websites and get validation on what our experiences are like. So it certainly is a fragmented activity space, but while we don't rest on our laurels, it's a constant battle, as we all know. And so you've got to keep innovating, and you've got to find ways to connect with today and tomorrow's digitized distributors.
Yeah, you're kind of answering our third question here about keeping up with market innovations, and I would kind of spin on that too. That is there any particular think tank that you have internally? Is there one brand that seems to always be coming up with new and the next best, greatest thing?
Great question.
Or do they come from everywhere?
Being focused on youth travel, certainly Kentucky has been one of our biggest innovators, but we really encourage innovation throughout the group. We use a number of collaboration tools, as we were talking about last night, and we certainly open it up. We have a $150,000 annual award that our chairman came up with called our Creativity Challenge Award. And so anyone who comes up with a fantastic idea can earn up to $150,000 US. So we encourage.
Do you have to work at TTC to earn it? Oh, okay.
But if you come up with one, we'll
work something out. Okay,
yeah.
Great.
So there are many brands, but as I said earlier, by keeping them all very much within their own DNA and their own management team, they're all responsible for coming up with innovation, because one has to today.
Great place to leave it. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.